Yeah.
So this is Stephen Buggie doing hardware hacking innovations, and he'll explain this wonderful pile of tech here. Thanks,
Okay.
Stephen.
Oh, okay. Well, it's great to be back here. I was here 17 years ago in 1996, and probably some must have thought that I dropped out of Apple II or something. But what happened then was it was my first year at another college. I teach at the branch campus of University of New Mexico in Gallup, New Mexico. It was my first year at that college, and I canceled 2 days at the end of the summer session. I got scolded for doing that. And so the problem is that KansasFest always seems to occur at the last week of July, and that's when the summer session is finishing. But now I've quit teaching summer session. I'm 66, so I get Social Security money replaces the summer money. So that's why I'm here. That I'm able to do this without getting in trouble. But but I would have been here probably every other year if it hadn't been for this time scheduling conflict. Now, what my presentation is, it's called Hardware Hacking Innovations. It's a series of little topics. I think most of them would be 5 minutes or so. But none of them really adds up to a whole presentation. So I've thrown all of them into sort of a collection. So I'll kind of jump from one topic to another. I thought I'd start though with an Apple II story. That is, I know nobody here has ever heard this one before. But anyway, how did I get interest in Apple II? Well, I taught previously at a college in South Carolina. And my psychology department had entirely Apple IIs. We used them for the lab exercises. There's plenty of software out there for that. And the photographers showed up one day to get some pictures for the recruiting brochure. And they wanted to get sort of a picture in the psychology lab of some lab experiment that we would do. And my department head was setting up an Apple IIe for it. And the photographer and the administrator with them said, "Oh no, you can't show that in our recruiting brochure. That is a computer dinosaur." And the department had explained that that's the only kind of computer that we use in our psych lab. So what we ended up doing was they put the Apple IIe down on the floor, ran the wires out to a monitor, put the current version of PC up on top of the table, but it was the Apple IIe down below doing the screens on the monitor. Okay, let's see. I thought I'd mention a couple of things before I get into the ones that were listed in the program. These are just little topics, but a couple of things didn't get mentioned when I submitted the proposal. The first one I wanted to do is just a real quickie. This one is a different kind of USB cable. Now, the USB cable has sockets that are called mini DIN 4. Mini DIN is this kind of round connector, and it's called 4 because it's got 4 pins on it. And ADB has mini DIN 4 connectors. Now, this one is called S-Video cable. It's also got mini DIN 4 connectors, and it works as a super ADB cord. Now, the only difference between an S-Video cable and an ADB cable is that with the S-Video cable, this shield around the pins is connected to the ground wire in the cable. On the ADB cable, it's not connected. And I've read a lot on the internet about this. One person put it this way. An S-Video cable will make a super ADB cable, but an ADB cable will make a lousy S-Video cable. Because see, S-Video is at radio frequency. ADB for connecting our keyboards is just a low frequency. And so it can get by with less shielding. The thing is that these S-Video cables up on the internet are cheaper than ADB cables. I think if you look for a coiled ADB cable, it's probably $5 to $8. These things sell as cheap as $1, but they will work perfectly as an ADB keyboard cable. A different topic. Remember I said it's just going to be a bunch of little short topics. Another one is what I would call the importance of EPROM burning. Now, I have an EPROM burner. About 10 years ago, I burned about 100 of these enhanced EPROMs for Apple IIc. They changed the original Apple IIc to the middle version of Apple IIc, and the middle version of Apple IIc can run a UniDisk 3.5 drive. It's also got the checkerboard self-test on it now. And I made about 100 of them 10 years ago. Mostly they were just sitting in the closet, and then I've been selling them on eBay. I've sold 70 of them. I've checked them, only 2 of them have been bad out of 70, which I think is pretty good for being 10 years old. But my problem is that I'm going to run out of these things probably by the end of the year. My EPROM burner is called the Super EPROM burner. The directions are, I remember it was a number of steps to it, and the trouble is I've lost the outline sheet that I used to burn these, and if anybody here happens to have a Super EPROM burner where you could photocopy me the instructions, I greatly appreciate it. I also have 2 other EPROM burners, but I never even got instructions with those. But I think the thing about EPROMs is that we have the slogan, Apple II forever. You know, try to keep this hardware going indefinitely, 10, 20, 30 years maybe. But I think one thing that's going to kill a lot of hardware will be when these EPROMs go dead. The EPROMs have what amounts to sort of like a kind of static charge in electronic array, and eventually they might go dead. But printers have an EPROM, your CPUs have EPROMs, other equipment have EPROMs. If you have an EPROM burner, you can transfer the code onto a disk, maybe even onto a floppy drive, where it can really last a long time. But the problem is, I think that if people don't get EPROM burners and use them, eventually some of your equipment is just going to die off and you'll end up discarding it. So if you have a chance to get an EPROM burner, or if you've got one, try to practice on it. And you can pop your EPROM chips out, read the code in. I do still have the disks that have the EPROM code for the 2C ROMs. I just don't have the directions of just how do I use the card. And I have to look for that. Let's see now, on the program, it lists the power supplies as the first topic. I want to change the sequence just a little bit. This is the 35th anniversary of the DISK II drive. And of course, we've all heard Wozniak tell about how he invented it in a hurry. I mean, I think what was impressive about his story of that, he needed to get this thing done in order to take a trip to Las Vegas. I think what makes that an ironic story is that most things that I do, and I think most things that most of us do in a hurry, end up being terrible. Whereas what he did in a hurry has lasted 35 years and will also last much further. So I want to talk about the DISK II. I wrote an article, I think it was in II Alive, which I called Hacking the Hackable DISK II. Trouble is I didn't bring any copies of it today, but Hacking the Hackable DISK II is describing 3 improvements to the DISK II, which can be put into the same drive. This one here where I've popped the top off has all 3 of them. 2 of them are pretty easy to do. The third one, the 2-color LED, is sort of a difficult one. I think I put the 2-color LED into about 8 disk drives, and it only worked on about half of them. I mean, it's got about a dozen components in it, and I suppose if anything is wrong, it's just not going to work. But this one does work. I've got about 50 DISK IIs and a variety of other drives, clones and everything in my garage. My wife wants me to get rid of them. Well, partly because I've kind of moved into the older Macs. The ADB Max is what I've got now. But my wife is sort of always counting the computers, and she wants me to get rid of these disk drives. Well, you can just imagine it's going to be a difficult thing to sell 50 DISK II drives, because I think everybody here, and most everybody who's active in Apple II, probably has a lifetime supply of 5¼ inch disk drives, right? So it's kind of like trying to sell refrigerators to the Eskimos. They don't need it and they don't want it, but how do you sell it to them regardless? Well, the way I plan to do this is to put these enhancements into the disk drives and then offer them, because sure, everybody's got a dozen spare disk drives already, but maybe you want one of these features. But it is pretty time consuming to try to put multiple features in the same drive. What I'm looking at it for the fall and the winter would be to maybe put one enhancement feature into each of the drives, because different users might feel that one of them is more useful than others. The first one I think I'll talk about would be the front panel speed control. I don't know if you can see, let's see, those who are in the front can see this pretty well, but there's a blue knob right here on the front panel of the disk drive. And if I move this to the left, whoops, wait. Oh, it's down on this one?
Except it just.
Oh, what happened?
Oh, you mean on a key?
Yeah.
Oh, whoops, uh-oh. Let's see. That's one, that's two. Okay. There are a lot of software out there to.
I have to put the drive. Yep. Put this in the drive.
Oh, I guess that one's one.
Oh, that's one on the bottom? Yeah. There's a lot of software that will measure disk speed. I think there must be at least a dozen programs out there that do it. I have one called Data Life Disk II Diagnostic. It's got a real nice graphic. It's got sort of a drawing of a disk II drive, but it just says, yes, it's running at correct speed, or no, it's not. That's not very useful. Just have yes or no. Copy 2 Plus will give a numeric value for the speed. I think it's supposed to go at, what is it, 300 rotations per second, and it'll just give you a number for that. I like this one that's on app test because it shows a scale going left and right. Let's see, is it number 6? Okay, whoops, let's see. Yeah, let me get that. This one needs a scratch disk because it's going to erase it.
Good use for flashing text.
Oh, okay, there it shows it. Let's see, it's supposed to be right at 0 over there. And it looks like it's going a little bit fast. Let's see, this is super fast. This is super slow. But it's real easy to just, yeah, that's probably about as close as you can get. I read somewhere that if the speed is off, it's better if it's run a little bit slower, slightly slower, than going too fast. Okay, so this one is a real nice one for doing speed. Now, the circuitry for doing the speed adjustment, it's shown on this handout. I call it bug drive, and tells about the speed adjustment. Yeah, let's see. And this shows the wiring diagram for the shoe guard drive. That's the one that Tony Diaz was working on today. It's got a tall stepper motor in it. Separate schematic for the Alps drive, which is the more common version. The Alps drive is made in Japan. It runs quieter, but it actually has a different resistor here and a different potentiometer for the front panel thing. But they both work in the same way. You've got the knob on the front, and you move it one direction to make the speed go slower, the other direction to make it go faster. I should have brought more copies of this. I think I've got only 3 or 4 copies. I don't know if anybody, if there's a photocopier on campus, or maybe if anybody wants this, maybe you take a close-up picture of it. Okay. So anyway, that's front panel speed adjustment knob. Is any question about that? Okay. Next feature is called the 3-position write protect switch. There was an article in one of the Apple magazines Oh, good, here, I found it. Write Protect switch for the Apple IIc. This came out in A Plus magazine, October of '86. Now, my Write Protect switch slightly different than this. First of all, they recommend putting on the top panel of the 2C. I think it's you're gonna have problems with that because, of course, maybe something is rested on top of on the front panel. With these DISK II drives, I put it on the front panel, and you're not likely to have many problems with it there. The other thing too is that this one is only a 2-position switch, where you have write enable on one side, write protect on the other side. What I've done with the 3-position switch is I have both of those, always protect, always write enable, and then the 3rd position is notch control, which is the original way that write protect is done. Because sometimes you might actually want to have that extra protection in the usual way with the disk drive. Let's see, with this thing spinning right now, I think it's in write enabled, because if I put it on write protect, this thing is gonna stop. It has to somehow keep reading and writing in order to measure the speed. The third and the hardest feature was not invented by me. It actually was invented by one of the founders of KansasFest. I don't believe that he was here in '96 when I last came, but I think I've read somewhere that he was one of the original organizers of KansasFest. His name is Jeff Hurlburt from Houston, Texas. Anybody know him or?
I know of him, sorry.
Oh, he's been to KansasFest, hasn't he? Okay. Now, I brought 19 copies of the handout on this. I had no idea how many would be attending the session. But Jeff Hurlburt wrote this to me back in, I think, '98. And he spent a lot of time. It's about a 10-page handwritten letter to me with the circuitry and everything. There's 2 ICs, I think a transistor, a few capacitors, resistors, and they're all on the analog board of the DISK II. Let's see, I took the top off of this one because the one down below does not have this circuitry. It's only got the other 2 features. But maybe after the session, if you want to look at this, just come up here. So the ICs are upside down, glued to the board with the pin sticking up, with soldered connectors. Just a lot of different things on it. And let's see. Oh wait, is this the one? Wait. Let me have it do it on the drive that's got this feature. Let's see. So it does amber for write and green for read. Let's see. Okay. Oh, okay. Now this is probably hard to see from the back. I think the first 3 rows might be able to see it. But this red LED is just a standard one that every DISK II has. The bicolor LED is up here, and can when it's reading, it's green. When it's writing, it's amber. You see that? Okay. By the way, it wasn't these colors originally. It was green and red, but let's see, Forrest Lowe, where are you? Oh yeah, he mentioned that, what is it, leaking capacitor, it makes it go
leaking capacitor because
amber?
the 2-color one to go amber.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know if I'm gonna go mess around trying to figure out which capacitor it is, but Anyway, it's, you can see that we're doing the software, it alternates between reading and writing. It is kind of entertaining to watch that thing too. It kind of has a different pattern of flashing if you're copying files as compared to copying a disk. And there is one commercially made floppy drive that also has this bicolor LED. It's the Applied Engineering 3.5-inch floppy drive. Has anybody had one of those? Oh, that one is great to watch because it's even brighter than this one. And I had one of them once, and it is quite amazing to watch. But okay, so that's the third feature of the floppy drives. Any questions about it? Oh, yeah.
I think Floptical has,
What?
Floptical has green and amber lights too, doesn't it?
What does?
Floptical drive?
Oh, I've never had a Floptical. You said Floptical has this feature too. I've just never had one or seen one. What was the other question?
I'm just wondering, like you said that the current position, currently you've got it with it down and it's in write enable mode.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be safer to have that either notch mode or write
Well,
protect
this
mode?
particular one, it's got to be in the write enable mode. Well,
It's just that if you have like a book falls over onto your drive and knocks it down on you, you don't want it to automatically write enable everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you would probably most of the time you keep it in the middle position of preventing any writing. Yeah, I mean, worst thing is to sort of get confused about which drive is which and end up erasing your original. Okay, let's see here. I'll flip the switch up and it'll probably make this one quit. Oh. Okay. The next thing would be the topic of power supplies. Let's see. A couple of general comments though about the internal power supplies. You know, like everybody's familiar with the rectangular shaped internal power supply, the 2E, 2+, and a similar one for the 2GS. And I've just got a couple of specific comments. I packed in a hurry and I didn't bring these things. I wish I did so that I could have popped them open and shows a couple of details. First of all, the 2E internal power supply. That one, the one that's made by Aztec, which is my favorite brand of power supplies. Some of these bigger ones are also Aztec. The 2E power supply for the by Aztec is both 110 volt and 220 volt in a certain way. I had about 50 of them and I sold them on eBay. Some guy in Italy bought, I think, 6 of them from me and they're all set for 110 volts. I asked him, what do you do? Do you have that many power transformers? He said, no, you open up the power supply. There is wire that comes out of the board and it goes into a socket. And when that wire is connected, it's 110 volts. But if you pull that thing out of the socket, it changes it to 220 volts. Now, probably very few of us are going to travel overseas, but your 2E power supply made by Aztec can actually be used with 220 volts. The other topic was the 2GS power supply made by Dynacomp. Now, Dynacomp is an American company. I think all the other 2GS power supplies are imported from somewhere in Asia. But the Dynacomp power supply is made in USA, somewhere in Texas. And when it fails, a particular thing usually causes the failure. I wish I had one here to open up and show you. There are 2 small capacitors in the motherboard of the 2GS power supply made by Dynacomp. They tend to burn out. And I've got a whole little pill bottle full of these capacitors, probably 20 or 30 of them. Those capacitors, I think they're 10 microfarads with 35 volts. And what you replace them with would be 10 microfarads with 50 volts rating. And I forget who told me about this, but once that pair of capacitors has been replaced, it doesn't fail again. Okay, but it does fail, and doesn't necessarily fail from overload or anything like. Oh, what are these?
Those are the guts from a 2GS power supply.
Oh, wow. Like, oh, great. Okay, let me see where they are. There's one of them. Let's see. Let me make sure I got those. Now this one has a 50 volt rating up. Oh, wait, pardon me. It says 1 microfarad. I didn't remember that accurately, but that's one of them. And the other one is right here. Let's see. How should I show you? There and there. 1 microfarad, 50 volts. So, let's see, who owns this one?
It's yours if you want it.
Oh no, I mean I don't need it, but I'm just wondering if somebody actually replaced it with the 50 micro.
Well, what Ed did earlier is he opened up a couple of power supplies and he replaced them with.
Oh,
And then
replace
design
somebody
power.
actually.
So those are
replaced-
good.
he
Those are
designed-
good.
He designed a new, has a new power supply with greater capacity and about half the size.
Oh,
So he
really?
was taking
Oh,
this
okay.
out and putting in the other.
Well, I was just talking about the stock one, so I
Right,
guess that's
right,
what this one
Right,
is.
exactly.
Okay, but anyway, it's great that this one actually has the 50 volt capacity because I kind of, I might have even have heard this that first time that I came to KansasFest. I can't remember where the source was, but I really can't tell if this has been resoldered. But it's those two capacitors, 1 microfarad, 35 volts, should be 50 volts. Is this in working condition?
Yes, it was.
Oh,
What he told
okay.
me.
Well, they say once it's been upgraded to that type of capacitor, it's not going to blow again. Okay, let's see. The next thing about the power supplies are these big ones that I've adapted for use with Apples. When I came here in '96, I just started making these things. I think I had made maybe 20 or less of 20 or fewer of them. I brought 5 of them here. I'd flown in for that KansasFest, and I sold those 5. I wrote this article in Juice GS called Power Boosting the 2GS. Now I'm up to about 235 of these power supplies. Now, you might wonder what's changed in the years. I made a lot of them in the late 90s. In the early 2000s, the demand for them dropped way down. I probably got up to 175 by the year 2000, and now it's up to only 235. Probably about the only changes that I've made is that I think if anybody got one 17 years ago, probably the wiring harness was on the outside of the power supply, but these days I put it inside if there is space available on the inside. Actually, so the soldering is not done here. The soldering is inside with a lot of insulation on the wires. Also, I like to put an LED in it as a sign that the thing is turned on. But I've made these for the 2GS and also for the 2E, and I've also done it a little bit with Apple III. I've made about 5 of them for Apple III, but that's a real headache. Somebody contacted me sometime in the late 90s. Can I make one for the Apple III? I had found an Apple III in a thrift shop, I think, or maybe a flea market. And the power supply for the Apple III, I don't even think has a case, but it's buried inside of the CPU of the Apple III. There's no fan. It had a chronic problem with overheating. And also the power plug itself was different than for either of these other 2 computers. It was, I think it had about a dozen pins, very, very tiny little crimp pins. I think there are about 3 or 4 of them for the 5 volt line, 3 or 4 for the 12 volt line. But it was so hard first to find the crimp pins and then also to find the right kind of plug holder for them. And it did work, but I ended up having a lot of leftover parts because hardly anybody's got an Apple III. Let's see, I should mention about the vocabulary of the plugs. I think I did mention that the Apple IIe plug is called an AMP6. That's the name of the plug. DigiKey can sell you the brand new plugs. You don't have to cannibalize them off of dead power supplies. That one's called AMP6. The 2GS power plug is called a Molex 7, and it's got a little plastic pin in the third position that's called the polarizing plug. The reason for that is that you don't want to sort of insert the thing into the power socket one position off. The polarizing plug prevents that from happening. The 2G, these external power supplies also have a type of connector that's called the Molex 4. The Apple power supplies from the factory don't have this, but all of the IBM computers have it because this is what runs a hard drive as well as other things. It's got a 5-volt line on one side colored in red, a 12-volt line on the other side colored in yellow, and then two common lines in the middle. And when I made these power supplies, I try to leave at least one of these Molex 4s on there because they're useful in various ways. Right now, I have voltmeters connected to them. Let's see, this one here that is, let's see. Oh, one came out. Okay. Why is it reading 0? Well, for one thing, you can connect a voltmeter into it. This is reading 11.7 volts on the 12-volt line, and if I plug in a couple different plugs on the 5-volt line, it's reading 5.2 volts. Okay, and that's well within the normal range for a power supply. I mean, you might think it should be 5.00 and 12.00. I don't think that even your Apple power supply is going to be that exact. Let's see, while I'm on the topic of measuring voltage, let's see, this is something that is in the outline. Maybe you recognize this as an Apple IIe power supply. It must have died on me. And what I did is I had a couple of 15-volt DC voltmeters, and so I put it in there. There's an LED showing it. This one is measuring 12-volt line. It's a little bit below 12. You click the switch, and there's measuring the 5-volt line. So even a junk power supply doesn't have to be thrown away. Okay. I've got a second meter of this type, and I'll no doubt install that in one of these cases. Oh, maybe you recognize the little feet there? Oh, you know, those look like Apple, what is it, DISK II feet. I put those there so if I drop it and it falls face down, hopefully the feet will prevent the glass from breaking in the meter. Let's see, the features of these power supplies. This one actually has a fan control knob. You can dial it one direction, speed up the fan. This dial it the other direction. It'll slow down the fan. All of these have huge capacity. They're from 150 to 300 watts. This one is 300 watts. Your 2E power supply, the internal one, is 35 watts. Some of the GS power supplies are rated at 38 watts. Some have bought these so-called heavy-duty power supplies. They got a black case on them. Those things are only about 60 to 70 watts. But I remember when I first had trouble with overloading the Apple, when I filled up a lot of slots, even those black ones tend to freeze up and get too hot. And the internal power supplies, when they get hot, I mean, heat is the enemy of motherboards and also the enemy of interface cards. But none of these create any heat under any load. This big 300 watt one, I even put on, let's see, I don't know if I can, it's kind of cluttered up here on the table. But this one has two GS plugs on it. You could run two GSs simultaneously on this one. I guess I could call this a two-headed Hydra, two-headed monster that can run two GSs. You could turn one off, turn them on and off in any combination, and it doesn't make the other computer crash. And it doesn't make any heat ever. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, let's say I gotta watch the clock. I'm also running overtime. Okay. By the way, I have another presentation Friday, let's see, wait, this Thursday? I think it's Saturday afternoon. So if I don't hit all of these topics, I can just mix them in on Saturday afternoon, because one on Saturday afternoon is called track centering alignment using software. And I think it's 45 minutes. I won't need the full 45 minutes for that, so I can hit any of the topics that are not mentioned here. Okay, any questions at all about the power supplies? By the way, there is one of them up there in the giveaway area up in the lobby. That must be, was that the person from San Antonio that donated all of the other stuff? I hope somebody will
Either
take
or
that
Sean's.
one.
Could have been Sean's.
Okay, but what do you need? But is it there for giveaway?
I think he's asking for a donation for it.
Okay, well, yeah, I hope somebody will take it. I mean, it'll break my heart if one of these stays here and gets thrown into the trash
No, it's
by.
not gonna get thrown in the trash.
Oh, okay, well, that's a relief to me.
Probably no one knew what it was.
What?
Probably no one knew what it was.
Well, there was a keyboard even next to it, and maybe because it's not on the pool table, people aren't sure what it's there for. Okay, let me switch to another different topic. The 2C power brick. I called it the bug brick. The trouble is I couldn't find the one I was looking for at home. I packed in a hurry, and but I did manage to find this one. One implication of Apple II Forever, I think, is that parts should be repairable, or there should be ways to preserve them so they keep working. One problem with the 2C power brick is that there is a fuse inside, but there's no way to replace it. Has anybody ever had one of these things burn out? Well, first of all, I hope that you'd salvage the cords. This plug is called the Mini DIN 6, and it's a female plug. Mini DIN 6 female is what this is. And you can actually buy these plugs. There is a place that I bought about a dozen of them. I haven't fitted them onto the cords yet, but it's in Chesterfield, Missouri. And I think that I think it's called something like Cables R Us, something like that. Just Google Chesterfield, Missouri cables, and you'll find the place that sells these plugs. Okay. Now, probably most of these things just get thrown out without any attempt to open them or anything. You can saw the case apart with saber saw, and it's not that thick. Look what's in there. Here's the wires. Let's see. This is for the output to the socket. This is the input from the AC. But look how thin the case is. What the bug brick is to open this thing up, find there's a transformer in there, and then there's a soldered-in fuse. What you do is you cut out the soldered-in fuse, look for a space, and I think it was some space like here. Then you get a panel-mounted fuse holder and install it in the drilled-in hole, solder it into the terminals where the fuse was, and this thing will be back to normal. I've got a monitor 2C up in my room up there. It's got a soldered-in fuse. Soldered-in fuses sound like you can't replace them. Well, I opened up the monitor and I clipped out the burned-out fuse, and I put a panel-mounted fuse holder on the back panel. It's not blown a second time, and I don't have a 100-amp fuse in there. I know I put in the same original fuse. Don't think that I'd be that foolish. Okay, so yeah, it's just a shame that something like this looks like it cannot be repaired. Okay. Let's see, on the Molex 4 plugs. Oh, let me just pass these little packets around. When I've sold these power supplies, I include a packet like this. Just sort of, we'll pass them around. What these are Molex 4 male plugs, and the idea is that if somebody had a power supply like this with these Molex 4 female sockets on, what you can do with this is if you have toys or accessories or anything that uses either 5 volts or 12 volts, you can take this kind of plug and solder it onto that thing, like maybe a little miniature fan on your computer thing, and then you can plug them into here. I know with USB they sell a lot of little gadgets like a light or a little fan or some kind of little toy. These things have such a huge surplus capacity of power that you could probably even put in a medium-sized fan if it ran on 12 volts. Okay. The fan transplant for the System Saver 2GS. I wrote an article in one of the magazines, I can't remember if it was Juice GS or if it was Two Alive, called Transplanting the System Saver Fan, some title like that. And now, I think everybody's familiar with the System Saver 2E and the System Saver 2GS. I've seen two of the System Saver 2GSs here at the meeting. But System Saver 2Es, probably everybody's got one somewhere. It's got this fan in there, 120 volt fan made by Rotron, American made. And the 2GS also has a Rotron fan in there, but they're not the same model of fan. And they actually went to a cheaper version of the fan when they put out the 2GS System Saver. You know, you'd think it'd be at least moving upward, but no, they bought a cheaper fan. And what a lot of System Saver 2GSs do is that the fan makes a rattling sound. Has anybody ever heard that?
Mm-hmm.
The 2E version, the fan runs faster, puts out more volume of air, and the thing is that they have exactly the same mounting bolts. You can cannibalize the fan out of a System Saver 2E and then move it into the 2GS version. It will run quieter and move more air. Okay. And also, if you do this, you know, it's got the label on it. You'll see that these are actually different fans. It's the company has a different model number for each of the two fans. Let me see what's left. Oh, let's see. Oh, great. Hey, that's the last topic. Okay. Any questions? I mean, we're virtually out of time, but does anybody have a question on any of these things? If you want to come up and look at the circuit board of that DISK II that's got the bicolor LED, you can do that. I've got enough copies of the circuitry here for 19 people. I mean, I figure probably maybe half might be interested in trying to put this into a DISK II. I mean, there's not enough for everybody, but I hope at least most of these are picked up. Yeah?
It looks like you use hot glue to insulate things from one another. Is that
Oh,
a recommended practice?
let's see. The question was, am I using hot glue on these parts? It's not actually hot glue. It's actually adhesive caulk.
Oh.
And I've measured. It's just the stuff in a tube where you put it in a gun-like thing, and it comes out white. It dries sort of translucent. But I've measured this stuff to make sure that it's not conductive. I mean, it's that it dries and has a lot of resistance. It's not shorting anything out. Yeah, I just kind of put that in there to keep the wires stable in position, but it's not plugged in until everything is like totally dry. Maybe a few days of drying before plugging anything in. Okay, well, thank you very much for attending.